Hello, welcome on this beautiful Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
Okay. This is a special episode of Reels and Heels. Yesterday was a fun episode. Today I think it's going to be a really good episode talking some comics. We're joined by Brian. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, he's having that coffee too. He slept in like we did.
That kind of Sunday. Went to MegaCon. I'm still recovering from a week later.
I bet.
Yeah,
I heard it was crazy.
Yeah, you were right in the heart of it. So you said that Saturday, like you couldn't really see anybody because it was that crowded.
Oh yeah, it was just a wall of people. So if I stepped around from around the table, I would just be like a sardine standing in line trying to get anywhere. They said, I think they like 140,000 people, like the height of that event. They were supposed to cap it, and they kept letting people in.
So, yeah, it broke the 2019 record, which 2019 I think they were at 98,000 or maybe a little bit over. So when you're pushing 140, we're talking that's San Diego Comic-Con numbers.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. So
yeah,
it was a party.
Yeah, so I mean, since we're on the subject of MegaCon, how'd you guys do at MegaCon?
Pretty good. We had a good traffic throughout the weekend, and got to meet a lot of other creators and vendors. I think Sunday I was just like, you know what, screw it. If I don't leave the table and go walk around and talk to people, I won't have the chance. So most of Sunday I spent talking to some of the other vendors. Made some good connections. Have some like specialty things in the works for the book. So
nice. And so your company is Shattermare Comics?
Yes.
And you just got this awesome logo, which I will bring up here on the screen because
it's behind him too.
Yeah, but I have this picture right here.
Thank you for pronouncing it correctly too. Most people say Shadowmare, and I'm like, that's also cool. So I'll take either.
So you want to kind of give us some background on Shattermare Comics?
Sure, yeah. So we started Shadowmare back in 2020. So during the pandemic, everyone was sitting at home looking for things to do. So we it's actually the publishing company was created because of the, I guess what you'd call our flagship book, Hardly Heroes. Which we can talk about in a little bit, but we needed a publishing company because we didn't know anything about the comic industry at the time, so we were just like, oh yeah, we'll just create a publishing company and just do everything ourselves. And so that's how Shadowmare was born, because it's kind of an inside joke between me and the other guys involved in the company. But yeah, so we created that in order to launch our first title, which we launched in February. So of this year.
Yeah, so I have the trailer here that I'm going to add to the stream here. This is a really cool trailer.
Gotta get the horse whip sound effect.
Four unlikely heroes will band together to save the world, despite their worst efforts. Watch their adventure unfold as they embark on an epic quest to defeat a great evil and try not to kill each other along the way. Watch them quarrel, watch them succeed, watch them fail. Join our four main characters, Harbeck, Shump, Theron, and Salazar. This isn't your grandfather's adventuring party. Follow along as they encounter awesome enemies and questionable moral situations in the fantasy story, Hardly Heroes. We hope you'll fall in love with our plucky cast of characters as much as we did role-playing as them. And maybe they'll remind you of your favorite group of murder hobos. maybe they'll be your favorite. This winter, experience a tale inspired by our creative team's fantasy party, inspired by everyone's favorite tabletop RPG. The book opens with the illustrious bard Renaud narrating the group's first quest. The main characters find themselves trapped in a mountain cabin, seeking shelter from an unnatural snowstorm caused by what people refer to as the Arcane Calamity. Magic has reemerged after the events surrounding the calamity, which seems to have peculiar effects on certain regions of the Deboden Peninsula. The adventurers join forces to escort a humble traveling merchant named Amelin through one of these very areas, through the treacherous pass of Mount Duboda to the town of Grelin. Of course, they will come to find that these quests are never as simple as they appear. Unbeknownst to the party, they've stumbled into a rather large web of conspiracies. A powerful foe plots to unleash a dark being upon the world, and our characters happen to be the best man, dwarf, wood elf, and half-orc, half-gnome for the job. Follow along as they unravel the web of conspiracies and prevent this great evil from destroying the lone. They aren't the heroes this world deserves, but they are the heroes this world needs. They are hardly heroes.
Yep, that was the original title logo in there.
That I love the choice of words from the narrator.
Yeah, we so a friend of our DM, in fact, in the very beginning, like when last we left our heroes, that's just something he says. Like that's like his tagline every time we start our game up, like our game sessions up. So I threw that in there, and then he has a friend that does voiceover work, and so he got me in contact with that guy, and I talked to him, and he gave us a pretty good rate. And I was just like, sweet, okay. So now we have a professional voice actor voicing our trailer. And I didn't really know how that worked. So he was just like, yeah, give me a script. Like, how long does it have to be? Here's, rate for up to like 200 words or whatever it is. And so I just put something together of like all the typical things that you'd think about in a D&D game, like murder hobos and this is your grandfather's adventuring party, So, and then that's just kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
Sounded pretty good in my head. So then I have a background in like music production and sound editing. So I mixed. Hopefully the sound sounds good, but I mixed all of it together and edited the slideshow back when we had mostly black and white pages, and we were starting to get some of the color samples in. For our original Indiegogo campaign.
Yeah, well, the music went along with it. I mean, it had that feel of Lord of the Rings or The Witcher or Game of Thrones. So like D&D, it all goes together, and so I think you did a really good job on that trailer.
Thank you. Yeah, the music is great. There's a guy who does a lot of copyright free music. Well, you can like do a donation or get like a package that's like commercial license for it. So yeah, if anyone wants to check out that guy's website, I've got the description in that video trailer. But yeah, so I just took some music I found on there that had like epic or fantasy tagline and mixed in some underlying samples of stuff that you would put together in a music score, basically. So.
Okay. So you have the comic, but you also are working or have a game in development.
So we're going to take the comic and we're going to redo a 5th edition module based on the first several issues of the book. So, and we also floated the idea of coming up with a card game because we had like collectible cards that we came out and we're like, well, what if we tie these into a game somehow? But that would be much farther down the road. But yeah,
and that would be something like Magic: The Gathering, or it would play like that.
I'm thinking more like Munchkin. Like I personally, I mean, if the guys want to do that, they can create it as in depth as they want. But I'd be thinking like the what are they called? Not like TCGs, but the where you buy like the whole set basically.
Yeah.
So like you get the card game, the set, and then if we release expansions, it would be like another whole set. So you don't have to go out and buy like booster packs and all that stuff.
Yeah. Because we've seen how crazy that gets with Pokemon and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's its own full-time company. So
We have a gajillion Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
exactly. So, and then you're hiring illustrators for all that stuff. So I think I would want to keep it more in the realm of like, you know, Cards Against Humanity or Munchkin, those kind of things.
So with this Harley Heroes comic, do you have an end planned? Is this going to be a set number of issues, or is this something ongoing?
It's ongoing. So we've got the whole first arc outlined, which is nice because we have all the original DM's notes. We know, you know, all the story beats, where they're going to go. We just don't know exactly how many issues it's going to be. I mean, we have a rough idea. It could be, I mean, it's going to be something like Saga probably, because the creators of Saga have said they're going to have around like 100 and 109 issues or something is where they're planning on ending their main story. So that will be our arc one. And then depending on, you know, how well people like the book, if they want to keep reading, if I want to see my character, because I come in to the group like a year later. So my character comes in like what's campaign 2 or arc 2. Then we'll keep going. So, but arc 1 will be its own contained narrative. So
Nice. And how many people are on your team?
So now there's 4 of us. So there's me, there's Kyle, who's I guess you'd call the author, the head writer. I do some editing. I recently brought on a friend of mine, Matt. He's basically the head editor. And then we have Gabe, who helps with editing, distribution, because right now we still distribute to all the stores we're in. So it's actually funny. Outside my office right here, I have a stack of bags and boards that came in from BCW. Like I got this giant BCW order, and so now my living room's like our shipping warehouse. So I don't know how, we were talking about like Travis and some of these other guys earlier. I don't know how they do it, frankly. I mean, I assume they have like, if they go through like Scout, then Scout handles it. But yeah, so I can't.
Well, I've seen Tom Hutchinson's like, he does everything through his house. And you know, that's why when he goes to cons, he drives because he brings everything with him. Yeah.
Oh, and his setup is great.
Yeah, his setup. Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about buying a trailer and upgrading, you know, basically from my little crossover SUV, just shoving everything in the back in the trunk. So yeah. So it's fun. So we have someone basically that's in charge of distribution. All of us do a little bit of sales. You know, we go to conventions and events and talk to some local retailers that are in our areas. We all do editing. I probably involved most with the art because we commission out all our artists. So I'm more like, I guess you'd say, the art director and the producer.
So our friend Ryan saying hello.
How's it going?
And he wants to know, how is everybody doing?
Doing well.
We're doing well.
It's a little congested, but
just a little congested. We got our coffee though to keep us awake.
Yeah, the coffee is helping a lot. So, but yeah, so we all wear multiple hats. Each of us kind of has a primary role, but it helps a lot because just bringing my friend Matt on and having Gabe and Kyle helps take a lot off my plate as well. Because going to, you know, talk to people, building connections, working with vendors, that's kind of its own. And then we all have day jobs too, so we're not doing this full time yet. Hopefully we will.
Well, I mean, as the many comic creators that we know, that's their goal, is that they want that's their full-time job, is to be the comic creator and get rid of the 9 to 5. Basically not work for the man, become the man yourself.
Right, exactly.
I think actually that's probably everybody's. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, not just comics, but just in life. I think that's everyone's goals, to be their own boss.
Yeah, the best way to do that is create something, because then you own it. So you create your own product, or so whether it's entertainment or art or like an invention, you own it, and then you get everything, you get all the reward. That's
Right.
a lot more rewarding working for yourself than anyone else. So
Right. So Ryan's already pumping out these questions. So Ryan wants to know your favorite superhero character and why.
probably Batman, and I know that's a lot of people's favorite, but it's because he's just a guy. At the end of the day, he's like a really, really smart guy, and so he just uses his resources really effectively. Like, I like those kind of characters, like him, Daredevil. Like, I mean, I guess I would say Iron Fist. He kind of has a superpower, but he's also just really good at martial arts. So like people who are very disciplined and overcome some kind of hurdle or obstacle.
Yeah.
So
And wow, he has another question, which I'll bring up in a minute. But you mentioned Travis, Travis Gibb, who we know does very well with his comics, and he has great stuff. And with Kickstarter, you had mentioned that he's kind of giving you some pointers, and I told you that that's a good guy to listen to.
oh yeah, absolutely.
So you're in good company there. So Ryan has a question here. He says, "Do you think indie comics will have their own conventions in, say, the next 5 years?"
Oh yeah, that's very possible. I mean, I'm already trying to do some stuff in Jacksonville locally with a couple of people. We were approached by a guy who has an art gallery on the west side of Jacksonville, and so I think it would be cool to have like almost a convention, but where you actually have original comic art, because even in Jacksonville you have, and in fact there's one store in particular I'm thinking of. Shout out to Gotham City Limit. The owner of their Ben, he has store exclusives by like Kirkman and Jason Metcalf and some of those guys, and so he's like, oh, I'm gonna go broke because I'm buying all their original art. Even though if he wanted to, he could sell it for a lot of money, but he has all this original art, and you've got local people who've got like, maybe they'll have like a Doctor Strange collection, and they have like this run or all of the runs by this character spanning decades. So I'm thinking like, well, why not show off their stuff instead of just having it where, you have a table with some vendors and they're selling, whatever. Like, have an actual gallery display of those things. So that's not exactly
comic art gallery. That's actually, that sounds cool, man.
Yeah, and then
That would be amazing, because there's so many things people don't see.
right.
Like, you get hooked on a run, or you get hooked on an arc or something, and then you don't see the other stuff. So this person's put a lot of heart and soul into collecting, and showed off.
Yeah, exactly. And you have so many people everywhere I go now. Of course, you've got all these graded, right, 9.6, 9.8, 9.9 comics, and you can't read them, obviously. So why not at least show them off and have the cover there, right? So something like that would be cool. But to answer your question directly, those kind of events, people like us are going to start putting all of those on, and there's so many, especially Florida, there's so many creators and independent creators and artists. All we have to do is get together. I mean, it's, we put some money together, we rent out a building. It's no different than like MegaCon we were talking about earlier. I mean, before Fan Expo bought them out, that was just like a mom and pop thing.
Yeah, it was ran by a mother and daughter.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, and it's just, they wanted to do a convention because they knew people and they wanted to invite them to their convention. So it's looking that way. Yeah. And if they don't, they're moving here. So
yeah. And he says all the cool kids live in Florida. one of the coolest and legendary artists of all time, George Perez, was local here to Florida.
Oh,
And he had passed away a few weeks ago. But living his life out, like all the way to the end, he was still visiting with people, and he was still semi-active on social media, and responding to all the people that would send letters and stuff. So yeah, all the cool kids live here in Florida. We talked about Travis Gibb. He's here in Florida. There's a lot of other mainstream artists. Greg Horn lives here in Florida as well. Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor, they live in the Tampa area. So yeah, Florida has all these rich creators.
yeah, a lot of Central Florida.
We have we have our indie friends that are just artists and creators themselves, like Josh Bauer and that aren't necessarily comic book creators, but they're still creators of
that's what I've noticed here in Florida. Just even outside of the comic world, there's a lot of creators in Florida. Like going to you said off camera that you went to your local street street market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you see all these craft makers making soaps or stuff for your plants and
candles and pottery, and I think maybe the pandemic afforded us an opportunity to create things, because we didn't have any place. We weren't going places. We weren't out of our houses. We weren't spending hours in traffic, things like that. That if we were working from home, we were finding other things to do too, because there was no travel and no craziness to go with our days in general. I didn't do much of anything, but we did this podcast. That's what we did.
Yeah. The streaming services really loved us. Well, the streaming services loved everyone during the pandemic.
The streaming services still love us because we still have too many of them.
Yeah, I know. I should have bought more Zoom stock before the pandemic. But,
right.
It was, it's a curse and a blessing. So, but if you use your time wisely, and now a lot of people can work remote, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Like I will never go back in my day job. I will never go back to an office full time. Like if they say if someone approaches me for a position, it's one of the first thing I ask, or that's one of the first things they say. They're like, oh yeah, it's full remote.
So okay, I see your question, Ryan. We have not watched Kenobi yet, so I cannot give you thoughts.
We're excited though.
We are excited.
The only caveat to all of that is it gave people an option to work from home, but it also gave us those of us who don't want to work from home, because we live in 890 square feet and we have two very loud children and I cannot work from home, an opportunity to really care about what you did again, to go back and be more grateful for the things that you were missing. Because I think being back in the classroom was one of the best things that I did after the pandemic. Because during the pandemic, I was instructional coaching, and I hated every second of it. And then I was teaching online, and I hated every second of it. And then I went back to school, and I didn't hate it anymore. I really was renewed, it was like, all right, yeah.
Yeah, there's some stuff you really can't do over a camera. So for those, you need to be in person. But also you got to spend more time with your kids. So.
Yeah, they're still loud though. So that didn't help. I mean, it was nice, because I think that we were always close, but we didn't want to kill each other. Maybe the boys wanted to kill each other, but I didn't want to kill them as much. And I think we kind of all found a way to coexist in a very small area.
Yeah. So, outside of the Hardly Heroes thing, do you have plans on launching other comics under your publishing company, or is Hardly Heroes your main focus right now?
Well, it is. I mean, it's our main focus, but we're pretty consistent now with Hardly Heroes as far as our release schedule and working with all the artists and getting the book together and printed. We're talking to 2 or 3 people about releasing something and publishing it under Shattermare Comics. So the short answer is yes. Just depends on how long of a development cycle it will be. And I found that it's easier to find people who want to write something than it is to find good interior artists. So right now we're kind of on the hunt for some interior artists who particularly would want to do an off-camera. We were talking about IP law and that gets into publishing, doing royalty. So a surprising amount of people, which I understand, but would rather just be commissioned and work for hire, so they can get paid in the short run for whatever their art is, but then they don't own any of it. So it's actually anything. So it's actually harder to find someone to say, hey, if you believe in this and you do it, then don't you want to get paid in the long run? I mean, don't you want to get paid royalties? You know, and so that's the difficulty there, at least from what we've found. So.
That's really cool though that you want to provide that. You know, you're not trying to be greedy and be like, yeah, we'll just, you know, hire someone and then, you know, we'll own it. So I applaud you for wanting to further up the community by working together and not be greedy like some people.
Oh, absolutely.
Rising tide, yes, raises all ships.
Yeah, I mean, right now we do. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you're open then. So someone say like they have a comic idea, they're just looking for a publisher. You're open if they bring you this book. They're like, yeah, I got this idea and I just need a publisher. So that's the kind of company you guys have.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they just want to do more self-publishing services, now that we've got the infrastructure set up, like we have the printing set up, we have distribution set up, you know, we have sales. If they just wanted to come to us if they just want to shoot me an email and they say, I have a question about this, and that, I'll be happy to answer. If they want to, if they need, they say, I have this idea, I have everything ready, I just don't know how to get printed, or I don't know how to get it copyrighted. I mean, we'll help them with that. We don't necessarily have to sit down and say, okay, here's, you know, publishing agreement, and now we, you know, own a percentage of your IP. So like right now we've got several, I guess what I would call creator-owned publishers, where we just promote their book for them. Like I met the people and I like their content, and I say, hey, you know, are you in this area, or are you like, what kind of sales do you have right now? Like for example, one of the guys, his name is Corey Mills. He lives in Vero Beach, and so you know that's like 4 hours away from Jacksonville, 3 to 4 hours. And so I said, well, if you don't get up here very often, why don't you give me a handful of your books? I'll just sell them. So, you know, I have his book for sale. I sell it at, you know, the little arts market that I was at, because his book it's a straight up manga, which we don't sell. I mean, Hardly Heroes is a pretty Western comic book. So it works out great. You know, I have his book available for sale, and I don't own the rights to it, but you know, we just do a split of the revenue. And then I have some guys out of Gainesville, you know, I help sell their book as well. And it was nice because someone bought issue 1 from us, and then like on the website we have listed their information, and so they bought it from us somewhere, and then they went to a convention they came to Jacksonville for, and they're like, oh cool, you have how many other issues out? 4? I'll buy 2 through 4 or whatever. So that way we're all helping each other out, because it's not, I'm not out here just trying to compete with other people. I'm trying to build the whole community. So
that's awesome.
And that's how we end up with an indie con in the next 5 years.
That's right.
Yeah. That was a nice little segue back to that original question there.
So it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah. And, you know, I've talked to other comic creators about this, so I'd like to get your opinion on it. Do you believe Kickstarter is the future of comics?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't think it's the future. I think it is the present. I mean, look how many people go on any crowdsource website and do well with. They don't have they're totally self-published, right? They just find the resources. Some platforms will even help you. Like I know for novels, Amazon does this. I don't know if they do it for comics now that they've got Comixology and stuff going, but there's so many resources for people where you can get everything done that you need to get done. Like for our logo, for example, we went on Fiverr and we just found a really good logo artist that matched what we wanted, and we hired them to do, the logo for the company. So there's so many resources available to you. So all you have to do is set up a Kickstarter. If you have good enough art and you have a good story, like people will find you, So, and then some of the smaller platforms, like people who already have big followings, they go there and they're really successful because they already have a built-in following. So,
yeah, we talk about Tom Hutchinson and Travis Gibb, who, they just continue using Kickstarter instead of going to the hassle of Diamond, because there's so many horror stories with that company. And then now, Diamond's not the only player in the game. There's Penguin House now is a distributor, I think, for like Marvel. And then there's that other company, I think it's called Lunar.
Lunar, yep, is DC, I think.
Yeah.
But there were reasons for that, like.
Well, what happened was there was a fallout at Diamond. People were kind of fed up with Diamond, so they started branching out to other places. And then I believe Disney owns Penguin House, so that's
take the middleman. You own you don't have to pay anybody else to do it. Like if you can do it yourself, that's why people don't always branch out. It's like, I got to make my money somehow. If they already own Penguin House, why wouldn't that be the thing? But yep. Penguin House also works in conjunction with a lot of like Scholastic and places like that they have good working relationships, and so their books are in the hands of even more people.
Yeah,
age appropriate.
Yeah, vertical integration. What's the fancy business term for that? Yeah, exactly. So they have all the connections built up. I mean, to me, that's more valuable. I mean, that's something that I'd rather do than just applying or submitting a Diamond. I'd rather go talk to these people. I'd rather go talk to store owners and make connections. And then if I come out with more books, I just go to those same owners and say, hey, I have this other book. It's not like Hardly Heroes, but maybe you're interested, And then at some point, you're competing with bigger people.
Yeah.
Bigger companies.
Being an independent publisher, do you think that if you have different types of product under your label, so you have like a fantasy book, you may have like a superhero book or a horror book, do you think that also helps with people coming and be like, oh wow, they have all these types of different stories?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, having a diverse product line is really important because, like, there's kind of like two philosophies. You either want to have like a core competency, so we could be like that fantasy publisher. So like everything we publish is fantasy based. Like we could take other people's D&D games, right? Like original adventures or fantasy stories and publish those. And then people would go, okay, if I want to, and if they're good and people like them, then people will say, oh, okay, if I want to read fantasy, these are the guys to go to, right? Or you branch out, like you're saying, and then if they come to you and they say, okay, well, I don't really like fantasy, I like horror books. And then you're like, oh, how lucky. I have this horror book for sale. Try this out. So that way you can still capture, sales that you wouldn't otherwise have had. So it's the only thing to be aware of is not to spread yourself too thin. Because like we already have a ton of ideas for different stuff. But even in house, like I had an idea for a story, like I guess you'd call it a Western. And then I had an idea for like a supernatural thing, or like was talking about with the guys and some friends of mine. But if like we stop releasing Hardly Heroes, you know what I mean? If we can't stick to our schedule for that book, there's no reason to branch out into something else, because then we fall flat. We can't even meet our basic book. So
That's
to answer your question. At the end of the day, just make sure whatever you do it well, and then you can do whatever it is you want to do.
exactly, yeah. So let's hop in the time machine and go back to little Brian. What were some of your fandoms growing up?
Man, I watched all the Saturday morning cartoons before my dad would make me go to baseball practice. So like the Spider-Man show, X-Men, like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon. So all the TVs I could show, especially if they weren't on cable, because we didn't have cable at the time. So it was just like whatever trickled down into like Fox Kids on Saturday morning. That was me. And then I actually got into card games a lot. So like talking about Magic earlier, my progression was Pokemon on set at Books A Million. They did like little Pokemon days. And then like I think at some point I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And then I was still at Books A Million one day, and like someone coming around with a trench coat was like, "Hey kid, have you heard of Magic the Gathering?" And that was it for me. I was done. That was my enjoyment.
I like how you said somebody come with the trench coat.
Hey, yeah, like around the corner, like, hey kid, have you played Onslaught before?
Did he have him inside of his jacket and say, "Here"?
Well, and it happened actually. I think specifically the person who turned me on was a girl, which of course I was just like this preteen kid. So I'm like, oh yeah, whatever card game you say is the best is 100%. I'm on board. So, but yeah, I played a lot of Magic. It was really fun. So, but that actually, I mean, some of those games will teach you more than any finance or business course. Like, I didn't need to take an expert level course about the market or like stock trading.
Hey, go in the other.
They do that on purpose.
I know they do.
But yeah, like I didn't have to take any expert level course on like stock trading because I played Magic. And if you follow secondary markets, it's all the same stuff. It's all market trends and like analysis and what card will shoot up in value because of the next set is released. Like it's crazy. You can get really deep into it. And you go to these tournaments and like you have like a binder full of cards to trade people. And so you're like, okay, I got to make this much money or value off of my cards, right? So teaches you a lot about economics.
If you think about like you're right, like the whole like Pokemon and Magic and all those cards and even like the Funkos and like action figures and stuff there, it's like stocks and bonds, like the values fluctuate and stuff.
Anything you trade. Stop.
Like as you can see back here, I have some of my Funkos.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that creates a market, like intermission.
So yeah, you were, you got into that. What about like, was there any like TV sitcoms or stuff that you liked growing up?
Yeah, I mean the animated shows I mentioned, the like when Toonami, Adult Swim hit Cartoon Network. That was when I had cable again. So we, all of the old like, ironically enough, not as much Dragon Ball, but like Full Metal Alchemist, Ghost in the Shell, like Cowboy Bebop, those kind of things. And like Scooby Doo.
All these cartoons that you're talking about, I still watch today. So
there you go. Yeah, classics. And then like weirdly like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and like what was it? What was that shit? So they would come on really late, and I was supposed to be sleeping because I had to get up to school.
Look at him! Look at him, Dad!
I'm just gonna monologue now to the chat. Hey chat. Hey John. Welcome. But yeah, like Sanford and Son. That's what it was. That. So you got some like weird shows. I remember my dad was watching like X-Files one day.
Talk about a creepy show. That show was.
Yeah, I had some nightmares from that when I was a kid. I'm not gonna lie. We watched a lot of Simpsons. Simpsons classic.
I don't know. Are you old enough to remember the TGIF block, like Step by Step, Full House, and Matters?
Yeah, I mean that was so. I was born 91, so that was like. I mean, yeah, I just don't remember it that well because I was really young. So that I wanted. It wasn't right before my time, but it was like I was probably like 7. So it's like, how much do you remember?
You probably got to remember at least dinosaurs, not the mama.
I think so.
It was a live action show. They were all dinosaurs, and
like
it had little babies.
Freddy's animatronics dinosaurs.
Well, it was people like in actual costumes.
I think so.
And they had the little baby dinosaur, and he always say, "Not the mama," and he would hit the dad over the head with stuff.
I think so. I mean, I don't know how much I watched it, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was one that I really enjoyed growing up. Nice. Did you read comics growing up?
Not much. I got into comics more recently. So one of the guys, Gabe, he's been reading comics for years. And as we were ramping up and developing the book and decided that we were going to turn the game into a comic specifically, I got more and more into comics. I did, though, however, so because I played a lot of card games, there was a card game called the Versus system. And so they had like Marvel Versus and DC Versus. And so I really enjoyed that when I was younger because like there was like a thing in card games where they'd have flavor text. So they'd tell you like, oh, this is the Arkham Asylum card. And they would have like a flavor text from the comics. And then the card art is basically panel art for the most part. So in a weird way, yes and no. So like I know a lot of Golden Age and Silver Age comic art when I see it because of the cards, even though I haven't really read the stories. So
I used to collect the I don't think it wasn't Topps, but it was like Fleer and all that. They released Marvel cards.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they had these really cool ones called suspended animation. And so like the card was clear, but just the character in the middle was animated.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're
talking about. Those were like really cool cards. Like my favorite one of the bunch was Silver Surfer.
Oh, sure, yeah. You like a foil hollow Silver Surfer. Yeah, those were sweet. Yeah, so yeah, the cards were fun. But now I'm going back and buying like all the omnibuses and collections, and I've got like stacks of books to read. So
yeah, that's what we do now. We don't buy single issues anymore because it just gets too expensive, and then it gets to be too much when you have like 100 issue run. You can just get the graphic novel, and it's spread out through like 6 or 7 volumes.
Or you have 600 comics that you don't know what to do with them.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll buy like issue 1 or like a key issue of like more recent stuff, and then get like that and read the full story. So
yeah, when it comes to the single issues, you bring up key issues. Those are the only ones that I would get, but it would be like the older ones.
Sure, yeah.
You know, like a lot of the first appearances and stuff like that. One of my personal grails that I would love to have is the Incredible Hulk 181.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, which many people that are comic book fans know that's the first appearance of Wolverine.
Yep. Yeah, that one. Good luck on that one though, because I think nowadays it's like all the old all the boxes and shops have been rifled through for stuff like that. So
yeah, and then they turn up on eBay for like thousands of dollars. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. That like, what is it? The Werewolf by Night, like the original Moon Knight. Of course, like a ton of different Spider-Man issues. Amazing Spider-Man.
yeah. And then when you have these movies and TV shows coming out, we got Miss Marvel coming out in just a few days. Her first appearance is already shooting up. She-Hulk, which comes out in August, those comics are starting to shoot up.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting how the shows and movies now have an impact on the comics instead of vice versa.
I feel like a lot of that, though, might have been well played because they knew these properties existed, and people who had the readership, you know, they had readership, people loved them, but maybe they were kind of unknown for most of us because, like, I didn't know anything about Guardians of the Galaxy until I seen the movie.
Right.
And then I went back and started reading some of the issues, not all, but, you know, some little things. And it was just interesting. I think it kind of like rejuvenated the comic book, you know, I'm losing a word. I don't know.
Like a revival.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people, you know, say the comic book store industry is dying, but I don't think it'll completely go away because, you know, we have stuff like Pokemon and Funko Pops and action figures that these stores are starting to carry more of, to kind of move with the times. And then when you look at stores, you know, they talk about physical media, you know, everybody's going to digital. So you have stores like FYE that are starting to carry Funko Pops and, you know, licensed T-shirts, you know, Dragon Ball and different characters and stuff instead of just physical media, just to bring people back into the stores.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can tell you from all the stores that I've been to, because I mean, we're just, at least in Florida, we drive up and down at least 1 to 2 Saturdays a month just going to talk to new people. And like, well, to your point, some will say comics specifically, the industry is dying or like has been stagnant for a while, but they're gonna adapt to something. So they're more like, it's funny, a lot of them, because they're still comic shop or it's in the title, they're really a collectible shop. So to your point, they've got Funkos, they'll have like card games, they'll have toys, because like toys have made a big comeback, I think, or at least it seems that way. So they'll be like a toy shop or a collectible shop versus, you know, like one specific niche. And yeah, like selling licensed stuff is never going to go away. I mean, people love collectibles, so
Yeah,
They'll just do it differently. I mean, like,
yeah, it'll just be a trend. Like, I think Funko Pops are kind of a trend because I was around when Beanie Babies were a thing. But like, unlike Beanie Babies, Funko Pops, they're familiar. Like, it's your favorite character from anything. So it's not like this random,
Right.
like, here's Rainbow the Unicorn. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, here's baby, like, I see right there. Here's Baby Yoda, you know? Like, you care more. You're more invested in that Funko Pop because you enjoy that character. It's not
yeah.
like,
I mean, I have like, you know, Tommy from Rugrats and
oh,
there's
nice.
Elvira,
Oh, there
Jason Voorhees, The Rock.
Nice.
yeah, you have a problem.
That's fine. I have a problem with records. I have way too many vinyl records.
Well,
like, on that high
let's talk about something back from the dead. Vinyl.
Yep.
We were in Walmart just yesterday, and I kid you not, they had a huge ass selection of vinyl.
Their vinyl section is bigger than their CD section now.
Oh, it's crazy.
So
And you know what's weird? Tapes are coming back too, like cassette tapes. So
Well,
we have
like
so weird.
when a lot of these bands have their own like online stores, and they do like when they have a new album coming out, they'll do like a vinyl, like an exclusive for their store. It'll come with the vinyl, the CD, and a cassette tape, and like a signed booklet or a signed photo. I've been seeing a lot of that as a trend lately too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got like the 70s coming. Well, I guess vinyl have been around since like
The 50s.
50s.
Well, no, the 40s.
That.
40s.
Yeah, but yeah, like mainly, like 50s to the 70s. So you've got that, and then cassettes, which is like 80s, 90s, and then some people are like, it's a whole other niche collectible market where you have like purists where they're like, oh, I only listen to like the highest quality CD, and some people are like, oh, tape is the best, everything else sucks. Like, no, I like how vinyl records sound on the turntable, so that's fine.
I have to agree though that all forms of physical media is better than digital. A lot of people don't understand. They're like, well, digital, it's right there in front of you. I don't have to leave the couch. Yes, but there's a lot of compression that goes into digital to make it, run through the internet. They have to compress the audio and the video to make it fit into a file, where on a physical media, CD or a Blu-ray, whatever, it's straight constant. The bit rate doesn't fluctuate.
Yeah, you can have I guess this gets more into the technical stuff, but you can have a higher sample rate on a physical medium. Now, I will say digital is catching up, so it's leaving like the convenience of the compressed file, and you can get digital that's like, it's functionally no different. Like, it's technically better than physical medium. However, it is super cost prohibitive. Like, you're talking about getting equipment that's like thousands of dollars, and like into the really hi-fi listening space. So, but eventually that will come down. We'll go back through a digital cycle probably. But there's still something to be said about physical medium. Like a digital, you're kind of stripping away. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like there's a type of sound you get from recording something on tape or vinyl, or I won't really say CD as much because it's basically just digital. Like you just have a laser reading the CD. But yeah, anything that isn't converted to digital, that's an analog medium, it adds its own flavor and sound characteristics. So it's interesting.
So since we're on this topic, how do you feel about books like comics and other forms of media of reading, physical or digital?
Oh, physical, absolutely. Like, I take that back. I think I've read one digital comic so far because I was looking into someone's digital platform that they were telling me about, like a smaller startup. I think they're in Florida too. And I think I'm talking about them about being hosted. I don't know. So sometimes, you talk to people about a partnership and it's really them selling you their thing. And you're like, but am I buying your thing or am I joining you? Like, are you hosting me? But so I went and read a couple of the comics on there. But other than that, yeah, pretty much everything read is physical. So
I know you have you can't, like, on your Kindle, you just can't do it.
I can't read on my Kindle. Like there's something about the light, and then even when you put the blue light shade on it, it's just I'd rather have a page. Like then I can touch it and I can fold it and I can write on it and I can do those things that are important to me. Like I just don't have a way to deal with digital.
Yeah.
In that way, I guess, because I'm, like I went to college still before there was true, like, catalogs online. Like I was still looking through card catalogs and trying to figure out where the books were in the library. So, making copies, so many copies. But like, I think part of that gets ingrained into you. Like my kids will probably be the generation where it's okay for them to be doing everything online, but I can't, and I won't.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something in our brain. Like, if it's digital, you kind of value it less. Because, like, if you can touch it, like you're saying, there's so much more, like, a sensory thing that you're like, oh, this means something. I can physically touch it.
Yeah.
Whereas it's digital, like, even if it's Kindle, it's just words on a page. And you're just like, oh, okay.
And then sometimes I wonder if that's not like part of our society in a way, like we've become very disposable, and we can replace something easier digitally than we can, you know, something that was tactile.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that's more
unless it's photos that you lose
Right.
on your telephone because you lock yourself out of
it. Yeah. You have like 6,000 photos. Yeah.
So I put this in the comments. You want to go ahead and talk about what you guys have going on your Patreon?
Oh yeah. So speaking of digital, so for our Patreon, that is where I host our digital version of the book, just because their platform is easier to like upload embedded the images of the book. So, but otherwise, it's I mean, we've got subscription through the website and Patreon. And so for the digital, I also try to add some sort of value where it's not just here's the book, because I set it at around what the retail price is, like $6 a month. But you'd save shipping if you wanted the digital book. But I upload the black and white, like 8 pages a week leading up to the full digital release. So then it's almost like it's like a binge kind of thing, or like an episodic thing. So before the full color release comes out, you get to see like the black and white pages that we're working on. So it's almost like an early access. And then you can also get a couple other tiers where you still get the physical book. It ships to you. So that basically includes shipping. And then you still get all the digital. So like if you wanted to get the book and you just wanted to save the book or whatever, and you have the digital version to read. So
do you guys have a Discord as well?
We do. It's just not, I mean, it is public. I just don't really post it anywhere. But I should. So technically,
I mean, you guys are building your community. So, I feel that once you have your community, then you can start doing the Discord, having conversations on there. Because I don't really get on Discord myself. I mean, I'm part of some, and it is interesting to see the conversations for whatever Discord there. I mean, there's Discord for everything from wrestling to movies to TV shows to music.
Yeah, it's
a Facebook chat. I'm apparently I'm old. Whatever.
Yeah, I don't do a whole lot of social media in general. So
I feel like I'm Mildred now. Like I'm like, oh, can't do that new fandangled thing.
Get off my lawn.
Oh my god.
Get off my TikTok.
I just don't like. We're in a text. I have a group text, and I'll go to work, and I'm like, what do you guys do all day? Because then there's 50 messages I have to read, and I'm like, well, now I can't respond to half of them because nobody will remember what happened 50 texts ago.
Right. I do because Discord's really good for this. I do like the idea of setting up like a Q&A, like a community session once a week or like once every month, and then just getting on and not even just like not doing a bunch of questions like in the chat, just hopping in a voice chat room and hanging out with people and talking to them.
But I think that's how you build. I mean, that's how you build a following and a fandom, because when people are talking about it, they're sharing ideas about, the true heart of anything we read. I think when we're connected with characters, we want to talk about why the characters do what they do and what could have done and what stuff like that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's cool that you have such a quick access to the people who are the creators. like speaking of Discord, I went to Monolith, their game dev company. They did Fear, like a game series. I'm trying to remember when the last one released. I want to say like 2015 or 18, but it's pretty inactive as a game series. And so I just went in there and I'm like, maybe they'd be interested in licensing Fear out so I could make a graphic novel of it. And I wasn't expecting to get very far, but like I just went in there, I talked to the mod. I'm like, hey, is this something they'd be interested in? He's like, well, I'm just the mod. Let me refer you to this guy. And I talked to an actual dev in the company and was like, hey, you guys aren't really doing anything with this IP. Would you be interested in licensing it? And they're owned by Warner. So I basically got like Warner Media would make all the final decisions. And I assume if Warner was going to do a Fear comic, they would just have like Dark Horse do it or DC. But, it's cool that you could just go on and talk to people involved in whatever. So even if it's like a bigger company.
Yeah. I mean, that it never hurts to ask, right? So
yeah, exactly. And like, the guy was cool. He's just like, yeah, I mean, we all want to do more stuff with it because they're the creators of it. Like, yeah, we would like to see more of this stuff going on.
Yeah. So you said they're part of Warner. So now that Discovery owns Warner Media, I know the CEO of Discovery has been cleaning house at Warner Media. He's tired of what AT&T did to that company. So he wants to make that company prestigious again. Is the word, because especially the studio, Warner Studios, what is the second oldest movie studio in America.
Oh yeah.
And AT&T ran that into the ground. And so if you look at how Discovery runs stuff with Food Network, Home and Garden, Discovery, the Travel Channel, ID, he lets the creators of each of those networks do their thing without interfering. Sure, he has the final word, but he doesn't interfere. So he is going to put people in charge of DC, people in charge of Warner Studios, and people in charge of like CNN and all the other Warner networks, and let them do their thing.
Wow, could you imagine? Like the people who actually make the thing get to make decisions about what they do with their thing. Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's why Discovery has been so ran so well over the years. I mean, they have a very successful Shark Week every year.
I feel like that's why they're a conglomerate without being a conglomerate. Like they have so many different things. They have Home and Garden and True Crime and Paranormal, and they have Travel, and they have this and they have that, and it all works because the people that are interested in it, that specialize in it, are creating whatever's happening. And so I think that maybe is what the success is. Like, you don't have one person that has no clue what's happening, trying to make decisions. Like,
I mean, that's why Marvel, I think, with the movies have worked so well, because they got Kevin Feige. That guy knows what he's doing.
Well, yeah. And that's that entity. And then like it's when you know what works, you can make it work. And then you're not having somebody say, well, that's not going to work.
But
because in like from the music side, Warner already does this. Like all they'd have to do is take a page. They have a bunch of subsidiary music labels, and they, for the most part, just let them run. Like they have their own artists, reps, and they find their own bands. Like they may be in a specific genre or whatever, but they just buy them because they're like, well, you're successful and we want to make money off of you. So let them do that with DC.
Well, David Zaslav, he is talking. DC is like, he's like, we have all these IPs. He wants to do something with them.
Yeah.
So DC is his main focus right now, because everything else that he owns is working just fine. So DC, out of the Warner Media stuff, is his main focus. and then of course the film studio. But like CNN and TNT and TBS, all of them are running just fine. So,
but I feel like that's how you know a company is worth it, is when you put people in charge of whatever their thing is, and it runs itself because you have people that you delegated it out to, but you believe in them. And so when you believe in something, you can say, okay, well, we all have the same idea in mind. Let's all make it the best possible thing we can make. And then we put it out there. Is put the same kind of essence into like DC. And, then you have essentially what Kevin Feige has made Marvel, like there's a point to what you're doing. And I think maybe you just put people that are qualified into those positions and they make things happen.
Yeah.
Like,
It's really funny because when the merger happened, like 4 of the top Warner Media executives resigned.
that happens a lot, especially if
they
you change,
probably knew their days were numbered anyway.
So John Campea talks about David Zaslav. He says the axe of Zaslav.
Yeah, that happens a lot of like mergers and change in ownership. They'll come in, clean house, put their people in because they're just like, I mean, generally speaking, if someone else comes in and buys something, it's, I don't know, they're like, well, we need to change some things up. You guys may be doing okay, but you can do a lot better. So
yeah, and it sucks that people lose their jobs because that happens, right? But it's the world of business. That it's an everyday thing. It's just what happens, and it's part of business.
Right.
But also, sometimes sometimes the ideas don't match up, like the overall motto or philosophy or hope isn't there, that you don't fit in. And so things don't work, and then it's a bad situation.
Yeah.
How you cut your ties when you cut your ties.
Right. Yeah, like I've been involved in companies where we were like screaming at the executive. I mean, almost literally. But like we were screaming at the executives, why don't you just do the like we were telling them, hey, this is how you make money. And it wasn't that they were just bad at it, it's that they actually were biased. Like they had, whether it was their ego or because the thing they cared about looked good, even though the company was shitting the bed. Like you were telling them, look, all you have to do is this thing, and the company itself will make more money. Like, why aren't you doing that? And then so they get bought out, or they have to resign because they know they're going to get the axe. And so someone comes in, and then the company is running way better. It's smoother. They're making money, and you're just like, wow. It's almost like if they just listened and done what was best for the company, or like you're saying, for like the content, the creation, if it has to do with art or entertainment, like basically in this case, what the audience wants, right? Because if it's artistic, it's really about your fans. Like you'd be making money. You need money hands over fist. So
yeah,
we'll see. I mean, like if you go into any comic shop, you can tell that DC doesn't really trust their IP and their characters, because the whole wall is just Batman or like Batman offshoots. Like you look at Marvel, and you can say whatever you want about Marvel, but they have a lot of characters, and a lot of their characters they're coming out with new stories for. Like they have like 3 or like 4 Wolverine stories out now. They've got like Hulk. They're bringing back Moon Knight. All of these things.
Yeah, and I think they just relaunched the She-Hulk.
Yeah, they're doing relaunches at minimum, right? Or they're coming out with new stories because they want to promote these characters, of which they have many. So, like, you still have a wide selection of any kind of story you want to read at Marvel. Whereas DC, you look at the shelf and it's like Future State Batman. I am Batman, like Batman the Knight. And you're like, well, I guess because I like Batman, I'll pick my best Batman story. But, like, I don't necessarily care about like Poison Ivy, even though it's a Batman character. You know what I mean? But, like, what about all of the Green Lanterns? What about Martian Manhunter? Like,
you know who's a cool character that I don't think gets enough love, and I think the story is really interesting. Is Hawkman?
Yep. Yeah, the Hawk
So-
family. Like, I mean, look at what they do with the animated shows.
Yeah.
They know what's up. Like, DC animation kills it.
Yeah. And speaking of Hawkman, he's actually going to make his live action, like, well, I guess I can't say live action because he was in Smallville, wasn't he?
Sure.
Yeah. Played by the guy from Stargate.
I have no idea.
Anyways, but they're doing the Black Adam. Hawkman's going to be in there, played by the guy from Leverage, the black guy.
Oh yeah.
He was also
What?
the cop in Invisible Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
He has an interesting name. I can't think of what it is.
But
Yeah.
that film, Black Adam, Black Adam's The Rock, but it's gonna have Hawkman, Dr. Fate, played by Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But I know you want to hold on to the characters that are tried and true. Like everybody knows Superman, it's a pop culture thing. Everybody knows Batman, it's a pop culture thing. And so it's scary to embrace other things. But look at what happened with
They finally did Wonder Woman.
But look at what happened with Wonder Woman, and then Aquaman, and then what happened with Guardians of the Galaxy. And so these properties were always there. We just never seemed to market them because they just didn't seem like they'd be the marketable type. It was like, take a chance and put it out there. And that's why I think indie comics and indie creators are finding out that people want something
new and exciting.
Something that is just giving them representation of other things. Like, there's only so much of rich white guys that you can take and homegrown super aliens. I mean, you can only tell that story so many times before you get tired. Like, to be honest, I'm tired of the Joker. I'm tired of that being the only character.
Offshoot. It's a Batman offshoot, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm tired of it always having to be him. It's them. There were so many more characters that were equally important to the creation of the comic that should have had some time. Maybe not all in the same movie, but or all in the same comic book even. Like, it's important to kind of see and diversify, and it's important to see other people too. Like, women in comics now, I mean, we make up a good portion of the readership now. And so if you never see people that look like you, I think that's why there's been so many changes to the way we're shown in comic books.
Well, like for the longest time, women looked like Barbies in comics.
Yeah, I think they fuck up though because the writers are lazy and they're like, hey, here's a woman, and then they expect you to like seal clap instead of actually setting them on a hero's journey and like having a character.
Well, and I think that's why you have to have people put in places where they're writing about, there's truth to what you're saying. Like, I think anything where the woman is the protagonist, I think that there should be somebody who at least understands, because I can't say that it's a woman having to write it, because Nicholas Sparks writes amazing women characters. And there's plenty of other writers that are male that also write good female characters. But say Captain Marvel, for instance, like this latest run is written by a woman, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, that character makes a lot of sense when it's written by a woman. And so, I think you kind of have to have that truth that comes through in the characters. And if you can do that, then you can pretty much do anything. So I'm not saying that a crazy person should write for the Joker, but I'm
Wait, hold on. You might have me sold on that. Could you imagine that?
As long as it's not Jared Leto.
I don't know. Actually, that'd be a really funny parody Joker.
Yeah.
Like they're like, okay, this is Jared. Like they should write that comic and just call it Jared Leto's Joker. Like just pretty on the nose, and then just have him go on all kinds of hijinks.
What? It's not called Damage.
No. Well, that could be the subtitle. Also, method actor eats rats or something. I'm confusing that with Ozzy.
I was really sad because, like, you know,
wasn't there an article he brought method? Wasn't there an article recently about method acting? Like Robin Pattinson and a few others talked about it.
Oh yeah, they'll do some weird shit because they're just like, oh, I'm in character. I think some of
is it one of the most famous method actors, Robert De Niro? I think so.
Okay, but I'm pretty sure that when Robert De Niro was acting as the guy in Cape Fear, he wasn't biting people's faces off. Like, you know, like there's a reasonable amount of this. Like, can you just harness another person, you know, for the time that you need to be in front of the camera?
Right.
I mean, wouldn't that show how good you are at what you do? Like, I mean, like, I don't teach all, like, I'm a teacher, but I'm not teaching all the time. Like,
so when someone plays, they're not killing people.
I hope people aren't just shoving people in sleeping bags and beating them up against a tree. But okay,
I have to practice for this role.
that'd be awesome.
Get in the bag.
We have a totally different world we're living in.
Yeah. I think on some level it's an excuse for them to just be assholes. It's like, oh, remember that really funny thing I did when I was practicing for my role? It's like, yeah, but it wasn't funny to us. So.
It's not funny now, like outside of things. Like the reason things are funny is because it's truth. Like, you know, we watched a comedy special last night, and I was like, well, that's only because. And you know, you laugh more because you know a lot of it is true. You might not know it on that kind of level, but you know that that's kind of a good way to look at it. It's an analogy. Well, that's something you can understand.
That little preview of the Ricky Gervais new stand-up, like he explains why people get on stage and tell jokes and why the audience laughs. And it sucks that we live in a time that it feels like comedians can't do that anymore.
But I feel like there doesn't always have to be a commentary for everything. Like we can have heightened horror. Like you can make a horror movie that makes us think about, or you know, you can make it an analogy or an allegory for whatever. But sometimes people just want to be scared, and it doesn't always have to have some undertone. Like it doesn't always have to be some kind of cry for, you know, equality or a cry for
they don't want to be preached to. They just want to be entertained.
Just make it fun. Like,
well, I think Jordan Peele with his movies, though, he does well at both, like telling something but also scaring you.
You know, and as long as it's not something that you turn into your soapbox. Because he's being honest about saying, I think that, you know, the stories need to be told. And I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that they have to be told in a way that it doesn't preach to me. And I'm like, oh, I get it. You know, like it's not like, oh, well, you know.
Yeah, your audience isn't stupid.
We don't need to vilify everything, and we don't need to make it this public display of something. It's like representation for the sake of representation. It's like, okay, well, I have a woman in the cast. I have a Black person in the cast. I have a Chinese person in the cast. I have all these people. It's just a token type idea. It's like you kind of have to have a reason for whatever you're writing. Like when you find out the real people that things are based on, you're like, oh, you know, that's, you know, because the kids asked me, what did he ask me? He asked me which one somebody was based on. I think it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something. Like he says, who's that based on? And I said, it's a guy from Germany or something.
Well, Ed Gein.
And it's partially Ed Gein, but it's not entirely.
the whole like wearing women's clothes and
Well, that's what Psycho was built on too.
Yeah,
So
Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Psycho were loosely based on Eddie Jean.
yeah, and that's fine. You can tell whatever kind of story you want with that, but having some sort of like undertone of everything. Holy crapola!
So, the big movie that opened this weekend, Top Gun Maverick.
Mhm.
Uh,
I hear that's doing really well.
Woo.
well, so far has made $124 million just in the United
Been
States.
open since Thursday.
Yeah.
Right?
So adding today and tomorrow, they're looking at $150 million.
People want to be entertained.
But see, people have been talking about how good it was, like how excited they were that
it holds a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. That means pretty much every critic that watched it enjoyed it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the fan rating was also pretty high on that. So, like, people aren't dumb. They know when they go to see something, whether they feel like it's just like keys jingling in front of them. They're like, oh, hey, you remember this?
Okay, so on Rotten Tomatoes, which a lot of people are confused. They're like, well, you shouldn't listen to Rotten Tomatoes. Well, Rotten Tomatoes, what they do is for every critic, this is where math plays in. So they have 319 reviews from critics, and it's at 97%. So what is that? For every 5 critics, like 4 like the movie.
Yeah, 4.5 higher,
yeah.
probably 97%. Yeah.
So 99% audience score with 5,000 plus verified ratings.
Wow.
So on Rotten Tomatoes, because for the longest time, people were bombing movies either to make it look better or to make it look worse than it really is. So Rotten Tomatoes changed the way that you have to verify you saw the movie. So you have to upload your ticket
or something.
To verify you saw the movie. So 5,000 plus verified ratings, a 99% audience score. This is the first Tom Cruise movie to make over 65 million opening weekend.
There you go.
And this is a guy that's been in the business for like 40 years.
But when you're thinking movies, okay, like let's be completely honest, because we the 40 somethings of the world are now having our own children, which we're sharing our deeply held love for our childhood, because we were children of the 80s and the 90s. And so we are sharing it with our kids. And so when we get a chance to relive something, not just a remake, but a continuation, like a return, a validation, something for the character. Like, I wasn't sold on it the first trailer I saw, but the more I see about it and the more I hear people talk about it, I'm like, well, I think I could be interested because I love Top Gun. It was an iconic movie. I loved it.
And I'm trying to figure out, people are saying to make sure you have tissues.
So I feel like this could possibly be like the coming full circle of someone and honoring, like I think a lot of what they're saying has to do with Goose. Like, the tears come from him losing Goose and that guilt that has followed him. And, growing up and becoming your own.
Spoiler alert, the movie came out in 1986, by the way.
But the point that I'm saying is, like, we're reliving things that we loved. And so seeing a character come full circle and it's honoring the old and telling a story about the new is equally important, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, they're not reimagining things like they did to the Ninja Turtles and the Care Bears and the My Little Ponies and all that. Like, they took things that we loved and they reimagined them into things that I don't even recognize.
Can we just talk about, like, in the last couple of years, the nostalgia? Like, we had a sequel to Coming to America. We had the like a new Ghostbusters that was basically Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, a lot of these remakes and sequels, they bomb. Like if you really look into the stats and like how much money they pour into them and what they actually make, or like the audience reception, like you're talking about Rotten Tomatoes, you'll have like a critic reception of like 90 plus. The audience is like 30. That's what I look for. So when I see that critics and audiences like it, I'm like, oh, okay, this must be a pretty good movie. So you see a lot of those, and the ones that break through that are successful are like ones that actually treat the source material with respect. Like Spider-Man No Way Home. I didn't watch, I don't think the other two newest Spider-Man movies, but I wouldn't watch that one because they brought in Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. And not only did they bring them in, they weren't just like, oh, hey, remember this guy? And then they like walk off stage. It was like, hey, you know this guy? We're actually going to redeem his character in those other movies that didn't do well, that were Spider-Man. Like we actually gave him a full arc in this movie. And now a lot of people like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man more than any of the other ones because they actually took him and they wrote a story for him, and it was creative and it was good.
They validated that circle of coming full circle and being able to right a wrong. And I think that in a way is kind of how they all felt. Like, you know, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was the first. And so he was like the, you know, I want to say like the father of the bunch, kind of.
He becomes like the mentor, like the older mentor.
He's the mentor. I think everybody was upset about the Tony Stark Spider-Man thing, you know, gee, Mr. Stark, you know, kind of thing. But I think that you do have to reinvent things and you do have to pay homage to the source material, but you do have to make it modern and not tell the same story.
Right. But you also got to remember when they take,
like, you have to make it modern.
When they take comics and when they take novels and they adapt them for a television show or a movie, the books and the comics are what they are, and the movies and the TV shows are what they are. You have to learn to kind of like separate. It's called an adaptation for a reason.
Yeah.
You can't, just take the source material and then turn it into a TV show or a movie, like word for word.
Well, and you can't bastardize it either.
Right.
There have been some properties that you have just annihilated the true form of the character through a sequel or through just too much telling of the same story.
But when it came to like Spider-Man, the MCU was already established. So they had to make a Spider-Man that would work for what was already established. So I think for what they established, the Tony Stark thing with Spider-Man did work for the MCU. Though we wanted it to be like Uncle Ben and all that. But the way the MCU was already established with like 20 some odd movies prior, it's what we got.
Well, and they didn't need to retell the origin. I mean, his uncle still presumably died. Like, he was just a lot younger, I guess. So he doesn't exactly have the experience that the other Spider-Men have. Yeah. And I guess they were borrowing from like the Civil War era where he hangs out with Tony Stark a lot more than he does alone.
And I mean, they kept the story there of, his Peter's parents died, and that's how Aunt May and Uncle Ben took him in because his parents were killed. In the comics, I think one time it was a car crash, another time was a plane accident. I don't know, but they had passed. So that's, even though they didn't mention it, I think there was like one passing in the Spider-Man Homecoming that it was brought up.
We don't even have to think Spider-Man. Like think things that are just comic driven, like The Crow.
The Crow, that movie was really good. A lot of people love that movie.
Or like The Crow, or anything by Neil Gaiman that's been turned into anything televised.
Well, the Sandman
you
is
know,
coming up on Netflix.
Sandman, but like Lucifer before that. Like Lucifer is a Neil Gaiman character. And so at the end of the day, Lucifer, Tom Ellis's Lucifer is much different than the Lucifer that you got in the comics. And I'm sure that the fact that you're recasting Lucifer and the Sandman is going to be another way of you know, telling that story in a slightly different way. And there's certain ways that you get a story told based on what you have. Like we didn't get the Spider-Man story told because we didn't have Spider-Man as a property for the MCU until Sony, joined forces. There was a whole thing, like there's reasons, but like.
And as we learned yesterday, it was legal reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all legal.
Wow, it was a lot of legal, like a lot of information. I don't even know what to do with that.
You could almost, like what we were talking about earlier, this is going to be a little bit of a segue, but you could almost chalk up most of the modern MCU stuff they're starting to do now is like I was watching a video or something, and they were commenting on it's all when Disney bought Marvel, like a lot of the stuff. So now that all these properties are coming out, it's like, oh, how lucky. They don't seem to really be pulling from like anything prior to like the 90s or early 2000s. It's all like it's nods, but it's just like superficial stuff. But most of the characters and the stories now are all after Disney bought Marvel.
True.
If you think about it.
Which so most of the MCU, because the first movie Iron Man was 2008, but that was a Paramount movie. Disney in 2009 bought Marvel. So yeah, all the movies after that have pretty much been from comics from 2009 to 2022.
Yeah. So,
well, and I think the heart and soul of any character, like when you think about like the Crow, which happens to be my favorite, one of my favorites, is like if you're looking at Brandon Lee's Crow versus anything that came afterwards, there's got to be a change because we no longer have that actor. Like the story is the same, the idea is the same, but we can't tell that same story in another arc because that character, the essence of that character is no longer there. And so I feel like they tried with Stairway to Heaven. I think
the TV show that was good.
The TV show was good, and but the original and even the sequel, City of Angels, is still pretty good. It's when you start going a little past that, it becomes Salvation wasn't as good. I mean, I love Eric Morbius, whatever his name is, but I mean, they're great people. Their heart was in the right place, but it's not the same. Oh my God, you need to relax. God help me.
They found the icy pops.
All right, you need to relax.
Yes. Classic icy pops. Yeah.
So I'm gonna put this up. This is your Facebook page link.
Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking about adaptations, like, and this is from my perspective as like the publisher, when you're in a boardroom or whatever, I mean, I have way more control over what the content I release. So I understand when you're in a bigger company, there's layers and there's your own intercompany politics. So all this bullshit gets in the way of making a good adaptation. Because you've got so many layers of like disconnection between the creators or even the original source material and what the end product is.
Right.
But the result is the same. If you're gonna make something and you're gonna put a label on it, and this label is like Sandman or like Game of Thrones or anything, like you can't, like some of these studios now, they're literally just throwing out like major plot details and like character arcs and descriptions of the stuff. And it's like, why are you surprised that you alienated the audience that actually made this thing popular to begin with? Because it's completely unrelatable. Like even if it's in theory the best possible adaptation, if it doesn't even relate to those characters, you should have just slapped a label. Like, you're just slapping the original label on it. Like, you should have just called it something else. And just, I mean, yeah, you basically have stolen the idea or the premise, but just call it like, you know, like something. So it's a weird business decision where they're like, okay, let's take this IP and leverage it so we can make all the money because it's got a built-in fan base, and then it'll be popular and we'll expand it to a market or demographic who's never read or seen or looked at the original thing. But then it's like they like shoot themselves in the foot because they're like, oh well, now the end product is so different from the original. And I'm not including, like, obviously depending on the medium you're adapting it to, it's not going to be word for word, right? Like, comics are better because it's almost like taking a frame and then you put that on a storyboard. That's better than a novel. A novel, you have to, you know, illustrate everything, or like animation is similar, but like you're not going to get the exact same thing. But when it's like, I don't even recognize this character, or I don't even understand why they made this decision, or this is why they made this decision, you might as well have just come out with an original thing and you have a better reception from people who aren't involved in the original thing, because then at least like they don't even know. It's I mean, it's weird. It's like, if you're gonna adapt it, like, be as close as possible. Hire good actors or voiceovers that embody that character and call it a day. That's why, like, I would rather watch an animated DC movie over a live action DC movie, most of them, because you get almost scene I feel, in a comic panel, or you get the actual story for these characters, and the voice actors do them justice, opposed to watching a live action movie where I'm just like, oh, this is just called Batman v Superman. Like I see that they chose some iconic panels and they did the scene, but the characters have no motivation to, like when you watch the scene when they're at the party and like Bruce Wayne meets Clark Kent, and literally however they decided to arrive at Lex Luthor, that was Lex Luthor. But like whatever amalgamation of Lex Luthor literally walks up and goes, huh, it's Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent. Like
yes, that was not Lex Luthor. I don't know who that was.
Right, but my point is, like, aside from that too, as being as like a side tangent, it makes no sense that this guy would introduce Bruce Wayne to a random reporter from Metropolis, like, except to just look in the camera to the audience and say, hey, you see these two characters? See them? They're in the same room. Aren't you excited? But like, there's no context there. Like, there's no background. Like, you don't see Clark Kent investigating Bruce Wayne. Like, you don't see him going to crime scenes or like using X-ray vision to show, or like going to follow him back to the Batcave and then being like, hey, motherfucker, I know who you are. You know, like, you need that scene, you know? So it's like they care more about just showing you the characters than like telling a story. So that's where I have a problem with that, those kind of adaptations.
So I got a fun question for you. So it's time to put your thinking cap on. Is there one character from either a movie, a TV show, a comic book that you wish you created?
I mean, if Superman goes into public domain in the next 20 or 30 years, I'll write Superman's story. I don't know. I mean, if it's a character I like, I don't want to say I could do it better. So, I don't know. I mean, I like the characters in my book. I like that I can bring them to life because I was at the table. You know, I'm at the table when we play the characters, so I know those characters. That's probably going to sound like a cop-out, but like, I started this publishing company so I can bring the characters that I know and love to life. So I don't think I would rather do anything else.
Do you have a favorite character that you've created?
Or
is that like picking your own children?
Sort of. I mean, I don't know. I started playing D&D when I was like 15, so I've had a lot of characters. But of the groups I played in, the warlock that I play in this game, that's the second campaign of the book. Is pretty good. That's some memorable experiences. I'll say the first character I played in that group, I didn't know how lethal the DM was. And actually, I'm gonna tell a story because I hope Josh sees it. But so I played this Kenku rogue, and like they're cute because they can't talk. Like their backstory is like they're cursed and like they got their wings taken away, and they can mimic things. So if you're familiar with 5th edition or chat's familiar, like they know that you can do all kinds of weird hijinks because you can like mimic the sounds of things. So you can like mimic people and like what they say. Anyways, that doesn't have as much to do with it. The fact that I started a gambling ring in the city, and I just like would set up a table and like because you get like starting equipment and you get like tokens, and so for like the road you get starting equipment and you can get like a card set, right? And so I was like, oh, I'm going to turn this card set that was like a gold and I'm going to start a gambling operation and just set up a table and like con people out of money. And apparently there's like an underground mob boss that helps run that city. And it's like a mob. So it's like you pay your, if you have any kind of criminal activity going, you pay like your tax to this guy. And in one session, after making multiple rolls, I made like 10 gold or whatever, like 5 gold. And I didn't pay. So this guy set assassins after my character and killed me in my sleep. Like literally over like 2 gold of tax. And I'm just like, wow, Josh, you had my character assassinated over like 5 gold. Thank you. He's like, sorry, man. It was the dice. Like, okay, I see. So I had to play like super min-max characters after that just to survive in this harsh, crazy, corrupt world.
So one last question here. For anybody that wants to play D&D or any type of dice game, is it easy for someone to just hop in and to learn, or?
Oh, nowadays it's easier than ever. So like now D&D and RPG, well, mainly D&D. I mean, there's a plethora of like tabletop role-playing games.
Isn't it like another one like Vampire the Masquerade?
Yep, Vampire the Masquerade started off as that. You've got like some werewolf games. There's a Star Wars RPG. There's actually, I don't know if it's still published. There's like a generic Heroes tabletop RPG. I think it's called like, don't quote me on this, but I think it's called like Heroes and Champions or something. And then I think they had like an official Marvel one for a while. So there's different genres. There's not just fantasy, but and there's like modern. There's like Shadowrun is one. Cyberpunk has one. So, but nowadays, like because D&D is so more mainstream, like it's so much more prolific than when I was growing up. You can either go to a game shop and they will literally have like an adventure league, is what they call it, and they have like in-house DMs that will run they create pre-built modules and will run those. So you can just go to the shop and join up. You just be like, okay, on Wednesday night, I'm going to show up here and join a group. Or you can go online. There's websites and forums with people like looking for group. Just like in World of Warcraft MMO, where you go like looking for group, it's the same thing. And then you could play on online platforms. So you just like hop in a Discord chat or Zoom, do like video chat while you're playing. So yeah, there's definitely different ways to go about it.
Oh, this has been a really cool conversation, and we wish you guys all the best.
Thank you.
I'm going to put the Facebook page up once again. So Shattermare Comics, you guys have a campaign supposedly sometime by the end of the summer?
Yep. Yeah, hopefully in the next few weeks in June, we'll have 1 and 2 relaunched on Kickstarter. So people that didn't get the chance to jump in on the first one will have Some of the same tier rewards, and hopefully we'll have some cooler ones, some more exciting ones. Like we'll do like different variant covers. Even if it's not like exclusive Kickstarter covers, we're going to try to do like maybe some metal prints or like a wood print. So I don't see many people doing wood prints, like laser etch stuff. But we'll get some upgraded dice thrown in there. So yeah.
Well, that's really cool. So we are going to run an ad here, and then we'll say our goodbyes. And yeah, so let's see here. This one.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
I have a shameless plug. My book is in that store.
That's awesome.
There we go.
In the Melbourne area, yes. Rick has an awesome shop. And they've been there for, I think, since the 70s.
Yeah, it's been there for a very long time from what I've heard.
Yeah, they're awesome.
So we're in the Lakeland area. Where can we find your book around here that you know of?
I would say the closest.
Would it be the Collective in Altamont Springs?
Probably, yeah. The Collective, or more places towards Orlando. I'm trying to remember how close Lakeland is to like. So there's the Collective. Is Altamont closer than like Winter Garden?
Yes.
Or like, okay, then yeah.
Slightly. I mean, they're all kind of like, they're all really close to each other.
I mean, we're right between that and Tampa.
We're literally
okay
in the middle.
Then yeah, because I don't. We're in a couple Tampa shops now, but probably Orlando is still closer. I don't know. So.
Okay. And do they have those Virgin covers that you guys had at the show?
No. So if you want a super collectible Virgin cover, the best way to find those is on our website. Otherwise, you'll have to find us where we're doing a signing or an event to pick those up. So.
And speaking of that, when is your next event?
So let's see. Let me pull up my calendar here.
Okay.
I have to have everything there, otherwise I'll forget. I'm very professional.
No.
I was super prepared.
That's all right. We're very professional here too.
So
I mean, you just saw our kids, so.
So we've got one next Saturday actually in Vero Beach at a place called Gamers Hut. So it's
okay.
Yeah. So they're a 2-store location. The one in Vero's in Mall. I think it's just the Vero Beach Mall. So we're gonna be in there because they do like a Saturday vendor thing. So it's cool because then you get like an arts market feel, but you also get to go check out the sweet game shop. So we're gonna do that, and then let's see what's after that. A couple things in Jacksonville. We're gonna be at a shop the 18th called Cosmic Comics. And then the 19th, they have a Retrorama comic and toy show here. So if you're in the area, and then at the end of June, Heroes Con. So we're going to do Heroes Con up in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, you're going to, like I had told you the other day, Heroes Con you're going to do well because their main focus is comics.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm excited. I hear like that's the comics Comic-Con. Because a lot of cons are kind of social cons now. So but that one's like It's all
that's the one that people go to buy comics and to get things signed by writers and artists.
nice. So yeah, we'll be there. We'll be in the artist alley. Apparently, it's like 10,000 square feet just for the artist alley, something like that. It's like thousands of square feet. So, and then you've got all the vendors around there. So, pretty stoked.
Yeah.
We're gonna do that for a couple of days, and then last day we're gonna go like camp because I always like to camp when I go up North Carolina. So it's gonna be
that's one state that I haven't been to yet. I would love to go to North Carolina.
I haven't been to a lot of states yet.
Well, I haven't been to a lot of states yet. I mean, I've been to a lot, but like of pictures I've seen, it looks really beautiful.
yeah, you should. It's beautiful. Like you can go into the mountains. So you can go to the Smoky Mountains, either on the Tennessee side or the North Carolina side, and then there's like a bunch of trails that go through the state if you're a hiking guy, and there's like a lot of smaller, like even the cities aren't like huge. Like if it's your first time, I always tell people to go to Asheville because they've got a lot of good restaurants. So if you like going to eat.
Well, we are foodies. So.
You're a foodie, yeah. So yeah, Asheville has a lot of cool little restaurants and like boutique cafes, and it's like a smaller, I guess, downtown. So you can walk around and still see the mountain in the background. So yeah. Big fan.
So for anybody that is wanting to be in comics as a creator or start their own publisher company, do you have any words that you would like encouragement, wisdom?
Well, I'll say since we started this year, it's a lot of work, but it's really, really, really rewarding. So I would say just do something. Like the hardest thing for a lot of people is they talk about doing something, or like I talk to a lot of people now, they're like, oh yeah, I have this great idea for this thing. And I say, okay, well, do you have an outline, or do you have a script, or have you put together like a pilot or anything, or whatever you want to call it? I'm like, well, no. I'm like, okay, well, good luck. So what you just have to do something, like get something done and out there, like I like to tell people, make it canon. You know what I mean? Like make your thing canon to the universe. Put it on something, right? Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a comic. It could be like a blog or a YouTube video or anything. So that's the hardest part. Once you do that, you go, oh man, this isn't so hard. And then you do it again and you go back and you refine it. And then, next thing you know, you have a story. You have something to show people. And then if people like it, they'll buy it. Maybe this sounds like a brag. I don't know. But I don't have a hard time selling it to people. I don't feel like, because I'm passionate about what I do. I enjoy it. And then when I tell people about it, if they're into fantasy stuff, they buy it. If they're not, then they're like, yeah, it's not my thing. But it's fun. It's fun to go out and tell people about, the thing I've done. So yeah, my super secret industry breaking advice to beat the mainstream comic companies is just make a comic,
Just do it.
Just do it, yeah. Just a lot. Boof it.
Now I just want to bring him up and be like, just do it.
No.
I mean, yeah, but it's true. It's simple. Like a lot of people are afraid of doing something because, like you said, it's like your baby, and you're like, oh, I don't know how people will feel about it. Well, to answer your question earlier about, what's my standard if I were to publish somebody, if someone brought something to me, my only standard is I'll publish it if I like it. Like if I read it and I read through your thing and I think it's great, then I will sell it for you, because I will have no problem telling people how great your thing is, because I like it, because I would buy it. That's my only standard for our book. Like I wouldn't publish it if I don't think it's quality. So, and then here I am, like some asshole who's new to the comic industry who just started a publishing company. Like I'm not special. I don't think I'm special. I just came out and I did it, and people are like, like I was doing the live sale at Rick Shop Famous Funny's Faces. He was making a joke. He's like, man, you guys can maintain a better monthly schedule than Marvel. I'm like, well, I don't know.
Well, we're going to close it off there. But once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to ring the bell and then stick around for after the show. We'll say our final goodbyes. But until next week, this has been Reels and Heels. Yeah, say goodbye.
Oh my God.